one. We are streaming live. I couldn't find you. Here we go. Okay. We're streaming live on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and all over the world. And welcome to Talk About TV, where we talk about all things experiential outdoor hospitality. I am your host, Michelle Oliver, and today, anyone who is watching is really in for a treat. We have an entire panel of experts, and the topic today is your favorite topic. What is the lending environment like? So this is really about everything experiential outdoor hospitality. It could be RV resorts, it could be a mixed asset, glamping, whatever that development is. We're going to talk about the lending environment. So welcome all of you. It's so great to have you here today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Thanks for coming, Carter. So we're going to just go around. Let's start with Kyle and just go, everyone can just pop in. Just please introduce yourself and tell us who you are with. Just like a quick one sentence introduction, if you would. Kyle.
Okay. My name's Kyle Losch, and I am the Director of Finance with the Madison Group. We're a 22-year-old commercial mortgage brokerage company that arranges financing on outdoor hospitality assets nationwide.
Thank you. Welcome. Really appreciate you being here today. Carter.
Hey, I'm Carter Moses. I run acquisitions for Climb Capital. And Climb Capital is an owner-operator of real estate assets, specifically RV parks as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here as well. And Cathy Evans.
Yes, Cathy Evans, broker owner of Montana Home and Land, and I live here in beautiful Big Fork, Montana, and my specialty is RV parks, and sold 15 so far and working on a few more. So,
congratulations on that
thank
latest.
you.
I love
Thank
seeing
you.
it. It's like every week it's another one. And last but not least, Randy Hendrickson.
Hey, y'all, Randy Hendrickson, founder, CEO of the Intrepid Group, a full-service brokerage firm in experiential hospitality, as well as founder of Intrepid Capital Group, which probably has some bearing on the conversation today as well. Pleased to be here. Thank you.
I think it does. Hey, Kyle, would you like to just kick us off with kind of a state of the nation? State of
Yeah,
readiness?
absolutely. Well, the lending market, as you guys are probably all aware, is a little bit all over the place, with a couple banks unfortunately failing, and the interest rates kind of being extremely volatile as they are. So, a lot of people call in and they kind of ask, like, who's lending? My local banks or whoever I used to go to is not doing what they used to. And that is kind of a common theme that we've been seeing throughout the industry. The other thing that we've been seeing a lot of is really just with banks and credit unions requiring compensating balances in order to do a loan. So, they may give you 70 or 75% leverage, but they want 10 or 20 or 30% in compensating deposit balances. That's really striking through from deposits leaving small local communities or regional banks into very large institutional players, or just treasuries themselves because the yield that they're earning on them. So those are two really big things that we've been seeing in the industry, other than the volatility in the rate environment. Another thing that we've been, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
The other thing that we've been seeing a lot of is clients really trying to rate lock once they sign that term sheet. And that has become a huge ask of our clients. And there are some lenders that are still able to do that despite the volatility. And that just gives the client a lot of surety that their proceeds are going to be there at the, after 60 days of working through the loan to closing. Not all lenders will do that. And as you can see within the last, 8 business days, the treasuries have spiked about 45 basis points. And if you didn't lock in your rate, your proceeds may take a hit, especially in the agency debt world, which is always a risk when you do Fannie, Freddie, or CMBS loans, because they do not rate lock. So we've seen a lot of people go to the credit unions or banks that are willing to do those rate locks for them for 60 days or so.
Thank you. So this is an informal roundtable discussion. I just want you all to feel welcome to just step in, step up, and join in the conversation as you see fit. Okay.
Well, everybody's so shy. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah. Don't be
Hey,
polite. Just be
hey,
informative.
Kyle, I do have a question for you based on what you just said, if I may. The rate lock period is pretty important, right? So if you're lucky enough to get your loan package reviewed and get in a good place, and you've got that prelim term sheet, and you've got that rate lock, you and I have a personal experience. I've used you. I'm not only a friend, I'm a client. You've helped me on a transaction with a park that I was selling, and you did an amazing job. I'm not sure else who could have held that together, but you did. So thank you. But rate lock period was very important in that transaction. I think it is for a lot of transactions. So how was that period shortened in, say, like the last year? What was a rate lock period maybe a year ago? And what's a typical rate lock period these days?
So the typical rate lock period is between 60 and 75 days. That's kind of the typical norm. I would say that is still the norm. The changing, the environment that has changed is the number of lenders that are willing to provide that rate lock. And the fact of the matter is they take on a huge risk by providing the rate lock, right? Because they are not going out and buying the funds or locking in their funds or source of capital until the loan is closing or very close to that timing or a little bit after. The lenders that still have a very healthy loan to deposit ratio and have excess deposits, they are the ones that are typically providing the rate locks because they have the deposits on the sidelines ready to deploy out to loan proceeds, and they're not going and borrowing from the FHLB or other capital sources.
Very interesting.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I'm curious too, also, have you guys seen like a dip in business this year with just transaction volume? I know on the owner side and acquisitions, right? It's been harder to get some of those deals done just because of the, bid to ask gap with sellers thinking that their deal is worth more than it is. And with interest rates now, rising, the deal wasn't worth as much as it was back then. So are you guys seeing, still a good amount of volume, or is the volume also now less on new deals and acquisitions and more of refinancing?
So I would say overall deal volume is still very strong for us. We have a very strong possibility of having our best year ever. And last year was our best year ever. I would say part of that is the niche that we are in, being in outdoor hospitality, campgrounds, RV parks, mobile home parks, self-storage, that kind of stuff. Those kind of niche assets has really kept us in a very good position. I would say that our issue is not deal flow, it is deal outflow, so to speak, having lenders do the deals at the leverage that we need them to do it to make sense for the sponsors. We have seen an overall contraction in LTV and LTC on just variety of different assets. Basically all of them. The lender that used to go 75 or 80% is now going 65 or 70%. And if not, they still may be requiring those compensating balances, which as an investor, 75% LTV or LTC sounds great. But if you have to come in with 20% compensating balances to hold at the bank, you're really not getting that leverage, right? You're only getting the 55% or 65% leverage, depending on what level of compensating balances the lender is requiring.
Yeah, we've seen that on our side too, from our other lenders as well, and local banks. And I think, a lot of them are also now looking at a full year's financials instead of just, the pro forma and even the past 3 years. We were actually talking about selling one of our RV parks as well that we fully rehabbed, and it's, been stabilized for 3 months, but the price that we're kind of looking to hit, we need to show at least 6 months to 12 years for the bank to really give it the price of those, 3 months of really strong financials on it. So super interesting on that space, and hopefully it, starts to kind of come back around as well.
Yeah, I would say that is very true. And any type of transitory or hospitality asset, the lenders are definitely looking at all, your T12 and they're scrutinizing it and looking at occupancy, especially compared over the last 3 years. We all know COVID helped the outdoor hospitality assets in general. And what they're really looking at is that sustainable and will that continue? I think the answer is truly yes, depending on location, but that is something that they are definitely looking at very, very hard. And Cathy knows we did a transaction on an RV park that was really newly developed. That deal was extremely hard to get done because there was really no financial history at all, very little, so to speak. And so that one was difficult. We ended up getting it done with a local credit union, I believe. And so that was kind of a big win for us. But I mean, we went through probably 20 plus odd lenders before finding the right fit for it. So that's what we're kind of seeing across the board. What used to take us 5 or 6 or 7 good lenders to really get competitive terms, it's now taking a lot more to get to those competitive terms.
Well, Kyle, I have 2 more parks for you with no financials. Can you hear me?
Right. We have a couple.
I have 2 parks, and one of them, he bought it as a hobby, and it's a motor coach park, beautiful location, but 25 condo sites, but no financials because he just brought all his toys up here and friends would stay there. So I'll call you after this meeting and see what you can help me with. Okay.
Oh, full warning, it will be difficult. It will be a process. Get your purchase agreement extended already, I can tell you.
Right.
Well, Kyle, I actually have another one that just popped up question-wise. Have you noticed a difference with kind of where the environment has shaped and lenders are getting a bit more conservative? Are they different looking at a park that is, a lot more transient and seeing nightly traffic versus ones that are more, monthly renters, annual renters type thing? Are they, leaning towards one or the other, or does it just kind of depend?
Yeah, I would say that lenders in general are more comfortable with the longer term stay RV parks, which is really not a lot of people's expertise, right? If you're in transitory or really outdoor hospitality, campground and RV parks, you're not really focused on the more longer term RVers out there. They're really 2 different parks, or maybe you have an aspect of both, right? Lenders are really liking some type of aspect like 50-50 or something, rather 50% long-term and 50% transitory, including the campground space. The reason for that is just the overall income stream, right? The problem for the investors are, well, I'm making X amount more on my sites because they're transitory.
Yep.
Versus a longer term stay. And the lenders are like, right, but you're not guaranteed the income. So there is a little bit of a push and pull there that we have been seeing overall. I would say the lenders that have been comfortable in the transitory space are still comfortable in that transitory space. They are just looking at overall occupancy and location. So the more tertiary parks are getting harder to finance unless there is some type of destination there or some type of attraction. So a lot of the questions we've been asked from lenders is, well, why are people going there? What's going to keep them going there and maintain that occupancy? And the other caveat to that is the rebuttal from the lenders are, well, if you are a family and you lose a job or your income gets cut or what have you, right? You start to cut your discretionary spending, and what are you going to cut first? And that's really traveling to destinations, so to speak.
Right. And that makes sense. And I know when we were talking last week too, one of the pluses of being in the RV space is the affordability that it has, even from a vacation standpoint as well. It is, 50 to 30% cheaper, depending on where you're going, for your family to stay in an RV than to either fly and stay in a hotel or even drive and stay in a hotel. So I do see, both sides of things as well, but location is definitely key. You don't want to have a transient park out in the middle of nowhere that you're not getting a ton of people to drive through.
Yeah, I mean, the parks where you would drive from, for example, like, and this is probably not a great example because Gatlinburg is in the middle of Chattanooga and Knoxville, but if you were to pick two metros and there's an RV park in the middle of it, right? And you had RVers that would stop for a night or two to take a break, they may be the ones that suffer more than the people in the suburbs of the metro or some type of attraction. And so that's where the lenders are kind of like, are they going to maintain that kind of occupancy? And the important part is just going with a client and trying to figure out what the rebuttal to that argument really is. And to your point, Carter, 20-30% cheaper than going on, I don't know, to Aruba or something. That's a huge argument, because instead of going to the, all inclusive, they're going to the RV parks to stay for vacation.
It's really
A lot of
interesting
them stay
that.
here all summer. Excuse me, sorry. A lot of them
Oh,
come
go ahead.
summer long. RVers, they'll come here, they'll get out of Florida, they'll get out of Arizona, and they'll come in sites like this motor coach site, and they'll stay all summer long.
Yep.
It's a destination location as well. Very
I
desirable.
think that the longer we go through this cycle, and the more millennials actually that have more discretionary income, I think you're going to continue to see, at least what we're seeing, is a lot more people are going to be, kind of living that RV park lifestyle, which was not the case 20 years ago. It just wasn't the case. You had to go into the office all the time. Now that remote work is more prevalent and you're getting high speed Wi-Fi from all these RV parks. And I know it's expensive, but it is important, because that really dictates sometimes where someone will stay, because they can plug in for the 4 days that they have to work, or 5 days, and still enjoy, traveling around.
Yeah, I was at a conference actually, and one of the things that one of the speakers said that has like fully stuck with me is Wi-Fi is not an amenity, it's a utility. And so these parks that offer it as an amenity, like that needs to be a must have, just like water and sewer and electric at these RV parks, because so many people are living out of them and working from them, which is great. And I completely agree and think that this whole kind of lifestyle change with COVID, and now these Gen Zers kind of coming into this space, are emphasizing, being active in their lifestyle and not focusing as much on work like the earlier generations did. And so they're putting more of a focus on experiences and wanting to live their life versus just saving money until they retire.
Yep.
It's interesting. Just watching the industry and what is happening, what has been happening, and what promises to be happening, there's definitely a rhythm to it. And Kyle, to your earlier point, if I'm a lender, I love to see a lot of monthlies and that stable, predictable income, because I feel safer about my investment. The reality of the industry is that the parks being built today, and the way the pivot is more towards transient vacation, leisure, working nomads, and things of that nature. The interesting thing is 90% occupied sounds great at a baseline revenue. 60% occupied at higher transient ADR means much more revenue, but there's volatility. So lender says, I get the higher income thing, but I don't love volatility. But then counteracting that is the sheer number of people coming into the outdoor hospitality space that are the digital nomads, that are entering in droves, that have discretionary income, that are paying for great experiences. It's hard to look at those trends and say the transient revenue is going to have a decline or a fall off. It's only building and growing momentum all the time. So how in the world does somebody like you go to a lender and say, I get the baseline revenue requirement of stability, but look what transient does for you at lower occupancy and higher rate. This is still a better option. How do you explain that?
Well, it's in the crystal ball where where the question is, what our rates are going to do. It's in that crystal ball, which I don't have, by the way. But it is difficult. I mean, we do stress testing, which a lot of lenders do. So if occupancy falls 5 or 10% in the transitory, as transitory occupancy would fall 10 or 5%, what would that do to the overall cash flow, right? And if there's enough cash flow to sustain that stress test, oftentimes it's a moot point, and they will, be okay with that. If that stress test does not pass, you have to grind a little bit deeper into that. And that's kind of where I don't know, that's how we make deals happen, really. I mean, it's not easy. There's no one answer to it. It's just working with the lender to make sure that they understand why it's a transitory park, why it's not a long-term park. Occupancy trends, right? If the park has been pretty stabilized the last 2 years, that also becomes a very big mitigating factor to them. Now, if occupancy was 55% in 2021 and in 2022 it was 60% or 57%, you have 2 years of occupancy trends that pretty much show that the sustainability of the park is there. So that's kind of where those arguments come into play.
I would say from our perspective as well, when we've looked to get loans on some of our more destination parks, they focus a bit more on the sponsor as well. So, yes, the park and the location and how it's historically done, but has this operator run a destination park before, or has everything kind of been long-term? Because as we all know, being in the space, they operate very different, and one is a lot more hospitality focused, experiential. You have to have a really strong management team. You have to throw events and activities that get guests to keep coming there. Versus if you have a long-term park, you're operating at a less than 40-45% OpEx ratio. And so you don't need to have as many people on staff and, throw all those events. So you can run it a lot slimmer.
And I would say on even going further with that, which I agree 100% with, is recourse versus non-recourse. The sponsors are okay with personal guarantees. It also becomes somewhat of a moot point as long as their balance sheets are good to withstand some type of loss throughout a period of time. If you're trying to get a non-recourse loan, it becomes a lot more difficult, and the stress testing becomes a lot more scrutinized. And I would say right now, 2 things that we see very difficult to get done is non-recourse lending overall. Unless you go to agencies or CMBS, your leverage it doesn't make sense. I mean, you have to be sub 50% basically to do that. And there are some provisions like carve out guarantees or burn off guarantees that we can negotiate, over the next 2 years or something, but it's getting more difficult to do in this environment. And the other thing I would say is the lack of experience. If this is your first RV park or campground and you don't have any experience, find someone that does and get them involved, because that's how you're going to make the deal work.
I have a question for you. The park that we just talked about that just closed and you worked on, the local lender here in the summertime, in the peak season, they had 1 mortgage payment. And then in the wintertime, it decreased to get them through the winter, their payments. Do you have any programs like that? So somebody knows going in the beginning of the season, their payment's going to go up. At the end of the season, it goes back down.
Yeah, there are lenders that can structure payments manually like that, where on your off-peak season, you owe very little, maybe just the interest, and then it goes back and catches up on the principal balance during your peak season. The other thing is just really managing cash, right? Appropriately enough to cover that debt service on your off-peak season, or maybe you're completely closed for 2 or 3 months. We've seen a lot of RV parks that have to be closed because of weather or something during a couple months. If you're purchasing the park during that period of time that you're entering the down season, then typically what we do is we just try to get an interest only period to bridge your gap through that time. That way you're ramped back up.
Makes sense.
I have a quick question for you, Kyle. Does everything you're sharing apply to like a mixed asset as well? As if I had a boutique hotel and I want to expand and add some Class B or some cottages or something like that, and maybe even a small, like I'm thinking more like Class B RVs. What is the difference between what you're talking about now and a situation like that?
I would say mixed use is looked at a little bit differently and almost is more advantageous for some lenders. And the reason is because you have different income streams. And Randy knows this more than probably anyone, or you, Carter, as well. But the mixed income streams of a transitory RV park or a mixed use, or you have long-term or transient or maybe a boutique hotel involved in it, it's just amazing of the ancillary income that you can get. The people making money on golf carts and ice and firewood and gas and everything else that you can imagine, if you would strip away that ancillary income, the deal just doesn't make sense anymore. I mean, there is significant amount of money that comes from that kind of stuff. So the more mixed use or ancillary income that you can get, the better off that you're going to be, because the more income streams, the less risk for the lender.
Yeah, as far as, for what you're saying, Kyle, in order to get to debt placed, to have diversification among different asset types and strong ancillary component is, I would think, very favorably seen by the lender. And also, quite honestly, it's just great business practice for an operator of an RV resort. You always want to, and Carter, I think we've talked about this before, you really have to be focusing on not just your site rate, but your ancillary streams. And it sounds like from what you're saying, Kyle, that really plays in the eyes of the lender too. Not only what are they renting, but what is the total source of income coming from the property? If it's well thought out and well orchestrated, I think the lender probably views that favorably. And it's just good business practice. But it kind of leads to one other question I have for you, Kyle, which is strength of experience in the industry. All right, so there's a lot of people coming into the space, as we know, that are new to this asset class, very successful in other fields, very well capitalized in many cases. They don't have operational depth and breadth. Is there like a 1 to 5 scale or percentage basis that you would just describe to how important that is to the lender, that the borrower has that expertise or has retained a team that possesses that expertise?
Yeah, oftentimes it's a deal killer.
Wow.
I mean, just matter of fact. I mean, it just is. And the only mitigating factor to that is truly leverage. If you get the leverage down to a certain point where you're making a 1.5 debt coverage or a 1.6 debt coverage or higher, and you're at a 50% LTV or something, then it becomes a discussion with lenders. But if you're looking for, the higher leverage, like every real estate player is, you're just very rarely going to get it. I mean, agencies, Fannie, Freddie, if you go and try to finance a mobile home park, they want experience. I mean, you have to own a couple, you have to have so many years of experience, you have to have your schedule of real estate that has all of your debt listings and your NOI to make sure that you can cover all of that. And it's the same thing for the RV parks, whether you go CMBS or campgrounds for that matter, or even hotels. If you just don't have the experience, and that's why I said earlier, if you don't have it, find someone that does and partner with them, because they will make the deal happen.
Makes a lot of sense. If I was a lender, I'd want to see that as well. So it does make
It's just that it's a niche, it's a very niche asset class. And although there can be a lot of similarities between other real estate investments, there's just really not too many assets like a transient RV park.
It's funny, isn't it? There's so many investors that I talk with coming into this space, and to your point, I've heard that many times. So it's like a mobile home park. No, it's really not. So it's just like a hotel. Well, not really. No, some similarities, but it's RV, and that's just unique and different in that way. There's overlap, but it's so distinct and so different with so many different pieces that are indigenous to this specific type of thing. It's a specialty.
Yeah, and
And
the first question I ask any prospective buyers calling in, do you own an RV park?
Yeah.
And got a management, we manage it. I ask what they do currently and have they ever owned one, and kind of get a lot of information out of them before I send over somebody's financials, so we don't waste anybody's time. But that's the first question I ask. Have you ever owned an RV park?
Yeah, one of the easiest ways to purchase an RV park has to be over 50% transitory income, would be through the SBA 7A program. If you have not owned another RV park, it is still difficult to get done. You have to have some type of relatable experience, whether you worked for that RV park or another RV park or whatever else. but you have to have some type of relatable experience. But we have had success in doing that. Again, it's not easy, but it can be done.
I got another question for you, Kyle. That on my end here with Intrepid and just the different industry type things that I do, I mean, we would all agree that the buyer has changed an awful lot in the past few years, let alone the past couple of years. Can you speak a little bit to how the nature of the buyer has changed? Who is, not that there's a typical buyer, but what I mean is a lot of mid-level investors, it seems, have kind of jumped out of the fray because of the volatility in interest rates. A lot of the big investors that we work with see that as a positive because the pipeline is clearer to get to assets that otherwise may have been taken away by a mid-level type player. Those with a lot of capital wherewithal and prowess to do that, we're finding it easier to go after deals. The deals are still hard because the inventory is depleted, but the type of buyer itself, if you could categorize 2 years ago, who was the person seeking a loan for an RV resort versus who is that buyer profile today? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, I think everyone was looking for an RV park fund.
Yeah, that's very true.
And it didn't matter the experience or the wherewithal or what have you. Lending was overall a lot easier 2 years ago because interest rates were at an all-time low and deals worked all over the place. I mean, they just did. I would say fast forward to now, you've had throughout that period of 24 months, you had a lot of what I would call middle market players that are on the sidelines right now, and institutional players are still very much involved. And I would say it really depends on the overall expertise and background and wherewithal of that sponsorship group. There are still some middle market players that are still very active and are putting out offers and trying to get stuff under contract. The difference between the institutional players and the middle market players or the lower level players is the terms that they are able to secure. And the lower level players are not getting the best terms. They're just not, because that's where they're at. And so it's very hard for them to get a deal to work as well, and counter to the institutional players that can get the low 6% rates or something, or even maybe sub 6%, because they are so well capitalized and have a schedule of real estate of 20, 30 parks or more. They can make a 6.5% cap rate work to their favor. Whereas, the lower or middle market players that are going in and borrowing at maybe 6.5%, 7%, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to borrow at that rate when you're going in cap rate on a fully stabilized park, right, is the same that you're borrowing, or maybe even more.
Yeah, no, and we're seeing that on our side too. I think, also with some of these larger group and institutions coming into this space that historically weren't there and now are coming from the manufactured housing industry and multifamily sector, there's a ton of capital in this space. So they might not need the 65 to 70% leverage. And so they can buy the deal with 50% because they have so much equity, and, they might even be just paying out, I don't know what their preferred return is on their equity, but it could be in line with where now debt is pricing for some of these deals. And especially on, that new construction side, we're seeing a lot of institutions and groups continue to build parks out there. And so they might not need to be very well leveraged.
The other side of that is, and we haven't really touched on this, but seller carry notes, they have become the hottest word and in this space, and maybe every asset class. And if you're an institutional player or a high middle market player, and you're very good at negotiations and have a very good balance sheet, and you provide that to the seller, they are much more comfortable in providing you a seller carry note than the first time RV park buyer or campground buyer or hotel buyer. And we've seen a lot of that. And I say, look, and we have clients that call us, and I'm like, get the seller carry if you can. even if it's a 2-year term or something, get it. Hopefully we'll be out of the cycle in 2 years. And then you refinance into, longer term debt. And that gives you 2 years of upside, right? Of increasing rents or doing your value add or so on or so forth. But seller carry notes have become extremely prevalent in this space and probably all spaces.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that as well. We've been working with sellers to strongly consider that, whereas they may not have before, they're certainly glomming onto it. Now it's just a vehicle to get a deal done. One of the larger buyers we work with has done some incredible seller carry. One was a 90% seller carry that you'd never heard of that ever in years past, but it was great for the seller. It was great for the buyer. I'm glad to hear that you're hearing more and more of that. We're certainly seeing a lot more of it. It just makes a whole bunch of sense. And for all you sellers out there, give it a thought. It may help you sell, and you may get a better price as well. Because if you can be cheaper debt than the bank, it helps your sales price as well. Secured by the property, get payments for a few years, they cash out. We like seller carry quite a bit from the brokerage world. Cathy, are you seeing?
And you don't have to pay a huge tax bill right when you sell your property.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and then when you have a park that doesn't have financials.
Exactly.
Yeah. One of my park owners, he's actually a CPA. He's put like 1.6 million into this park, and he's adding cabins because here in Montana, just anybody listening, a lot of people are living in RVs here year round because of the lack of housing. So don't think of Montana RV parks, just seasonal. Quite a few parks do operate year round. So yes, 3 parks I have right now, they're offering owner financing. Some of them also don't want the huge capital gains because they bought the park several years ago, mom and pop, and they're turning around for millions, and then they don't want the capital gains. But typically I'm seeing seller carry about a 5-year or 10-year balloon. And we have here what's called a Montana trust indenture. So.
Montana.
Where are you seeing those kind of rates come in? Because we've done a few seller carries, and we're able to get, rates still in that low 5s, sometimes, a bit higher now with rates continuing to increase, but on the ones that you're working on right now.
One of them, he offered 5, another one 5.5, and another 5 3/4. The highest one was possibly 6. It's all flexible depending upon the buyer.
Yeah, and I mean, you're seeing, they can go and take that money, right, and put it into treasuries, or I think some CDs that I've seen at around 5%. So if they can make 5.5% and securitize it with an asset that they very much know, despite they probably don't want it back in a year, the probability of that happening is probably slim to none.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is just a vehicle to get things done these days. We were talking with one client who was really kind of against the idea initially because he thought that kind of stigmatized him as a problem property. There must be something wrong with it and nobody could get financing on it. But we successfully convinced him that it really is just an intelligent way to go about positioning an asset for sale. It's great for the seller, great for the buyer. And interesting that you're seeing that so much on your end as well, Kyle. We really, at Intrepid, we really think that's the way things are going to be getting done for quite a while. It's just going to be a huge part of it. It always has been, but even more now so than ever. It's just a great vehicle to get something done, period.
Yeah, it's not great for our business, but it is. And, we just hopefully we get to do the takeout.
But we've done parts here where there was a lender in first position and the seller carried the rest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there are some lenders that will allow that. Oftentimes they will require the seller carry to be on full standby, meaning no debt payments are allowed other than maybe interest payments. And others will make that interest payment accrue until they get into a very good LTV position or until their debt is totally paid off. So there's some flexible lenders out there, and then some other ones, I would say the majority of them do not like seller carries. Depending on the leverage that the both loans are going to put it in, right? If you're between both loans, the seller carry in the first lien position, if you're sub 70%, it's not much of a conversation. But if you're trying to get 90% financing between the first lender and the seller carry, it becomes a very difficult situation.
Well, and a
And the
lot of
reason
those
is-
tend to be first-time buyers too, right? They don't have the cash. So then you
Yeah.
go back to experience and can they actually get this done? And a lot of lenders want to see that you're also putting up your own money as well as having, you know, full skin in the game. So.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, and the ultimate reason is because if that would, you know, if the first lien position holder had to go take that back, they would have to take out the second lien position holder. And the second lien position holder is probably not wealthy enough to take out the first lien position holder.
Mhm. Makes total sense. I have one question for you, Kyle. It's slightly afield, but I think related. Experiential hospitality. Michelle and I talk about this all the time. With Intrepid, we talk about it all the time. It's not just RV parks and campgrounds, but it's hotel and hotel RV park hybrids. It's hotel marina. There's so many asset classes that we feel all belongs in the world of what we call experiential hospitality. It doesn't have to just be straight up RV. It could be RV, glamping, boutique hotel, marina. At the risk of turning this into a commercial for you, is your group working actively in all those asset classes? And are you able to do the thing that is a marina and small boutique hotel room plus RV park? Does that have better weight with a lender, that type of property? Or is that just back to that risk thing about too many things going on here?
No, I don't think, I think that's better. I mean, the most important thing is to have some type of financials or breakdown, right? Whether that is in paragraph form or in financials of each income stream. And that's the most difficult part, I think, that we see when it's very much mixed use is, well, how much is coming from marinas, right? So what is the percentage of revenue from that? Are they mostly the people that are staying there, or are they locals that are actually occupying the marina slips? And we're doing one in Texas now that is marina slash RV park. Some of it's long-term, some of it's transient. So we have 3 income streams, not including the ancillary income streams, such as, you know, firewood, gas, propane, that kind of stuff. So it's very much doable. I think that, in my personal opinion, the more mixed your income stream, the better it is. It's more difficult to underwrite and relay to the lender, but you just have to take your due diligence and time to do that. And I'll couple that by saying your first presentation with a lender is probably the most important part of the loan process. I think that that's very crucial to say, because that is where most deals die.
It makes a lot of sense.
Go ahead, Randy.
You know, the first roundtable we did with Carter and Cathy a little while back, and Kyle, so glad you're here. We talked in that about the importance of the financials from any park operator, and we discussed always having them in seller ready condition. That being defined as a lot of line items. You know, the worst thing that I think a lender can see, the worst thing a broker can see, is one thing that says gross revenue and it's this number and it's aggregated from a year basis. It's great you made $3 million last year. I don't know if it was $2 million worth of firewood and $1 million worth of gas station. I don't know if that was marina, lodging, hotel. Break it out, break it out, break it out. Show them individual line items. Your job's easier. The broker's job's easier. You sell it faster. You know, I just think it's something just to kind of bring home again. If you're a seller or just an operator, best practices to operate your park. You know, if you're not a seller, have them in seller ready condition anyway. It's a great way to run the business. When you do go to sell, it makes the lender's job easier, the broker's job easier. If you have any questions about that, you know, find a campground specific accounting firm, because it's different than just regular QuickBooks, and get the books in order. It's just good business, and it makes the sales process so much easier, and the lending process.
And that can be the difference between making a deal happen and not make a deal happen. And I'll give you an example. We were trying to arrange financing on a park that basically was all cash, and you know, the guy owned it for a long time, and his daily or monthly routine was to go in there and collect everyone's check and cash every month, and reported very little of it. It's very hard to tell a lender that you grossed $1 million 5, and $1 million is out there somewhere floating around, and you don't know where it's at, and there's no real bank statements to show it. So it just becomes unfinanceable at that point. And
Yeah, that dreaded cash line item that is shown on those P&Ls.
yeah, it's typically not inserted in there until they decide that they're going to sell.
Yep. Until they realize they can't get the price that they want for it. And so they throw it in there to get the NOI up a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, if it's not in the books, it never happened. It doesn't matter if you got a pillow slip full of $100 bills that you didn't report. If it's not in the records, it never happened. So.
Remember the park I shared with you before where I did a whole pro forma for this park, 71 RV sites, 24 mobile homes, and a lot of cash. And so I worked with the buyer and seller, and I did the pro forma. We got the loan done and everything. And after we closed, the buyer calls me up and says, "Cathy, we have to talk." I'm like, "Oh no, what's wrong?" Because we're making so much more than what.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was a sweet deal. I'm like, "Oh, thank God."
Yeah, that's better than the opposite.
Exactly. He's doing really well. Yeah.
How are you seeing like construction financing happen right now? Is that kind of slowed down a little bit? Because I know, in the industry, right, we're seeing a ton of demand and there's, more demand than there is supply. So we've been talking to a lot of groups either about expanding their parks. We've expanded our parks, doing development deals, but with rising interest rates, I mean, it's challenging to do a new construction ground up at 9+%. So curious to see how you guys are also seeing that.
Yeah, I would say overall construction has become extremely difficult to get done at a decent interest rate.
Yeah.
There are plenty of lenders out there that are willing to do construction. It is just a matter of, well, how many points and what's the interest rate? I think overall, the reasoning is because a lot of construction was done in 2020 and 2021 and even in 2022. And those construction loans didn't perform quite as expected. And the reason is because of just overall supply chain issues, right? So their construction period may have taken a little bit longer. The lease up then obviously took up longer. And so the maturity dates of some of those construction loans came due, and they couldn't refinance fast enough because they didn't have enough P&Ls to support it. And we have a couple of those scenarios now, and there are kind of strict guidelines when it comes to that kind of stuff. And the other issue is interest rates. People penciled a 5% exit rate, and they're 6.5%, 7% now, and it just doesn't make sense anymore. So I think it was the MBA conference, the new slogan was cash in refis instead of cash out, because when you refinance your construction loan, a lot of people were coming in with money instead of going out with money. And that has kind of been, I don't want to say a new norm, but certainly more common than what we've seen in previous timeframes.
So if I had to ask you to look into your crystal ball and you had a client come to you and say, "Hey, I've got a, development spot that I want to start on," would you tell them to potentially wait a little bit and see kind of where the market shakes out? Or is it just, no one ever knows, right? Rates could continue to rise, or maybe they're going to lower back in 2 years.
If we all waited, we would never make money.
Very true.
Bravo.
So, I wouldn't say wait. I really wouldn't. I would say, let's go out to the market. Let's test it. Let's see what we can get. And then let's make an educated decision on it. If the decision is let's wait 6 months and go back out and collect quotes again and see where interest rates are at, great, let's do it. If the decision is let's move forward and get it done because, I think I'm willing to pay 10% on a construction loan today for 18 months or 24 months, just call it opportunity cost or whatever, and then pencil a 7% rate on the exit. I don't foresee rates are going to increase much more. If they do, we're probably going to have more of an issue than just trying to budget our debt. ceiling as a government. So I wouldn't say wait. I would say let's test the market and then make an educated decision.
Totally agree.
Here, here. Totally agree. So we at Expitality, we're certainly seeing a lot of people coming into the space with really well thought out plans, business plans. We're blessed to be working with them on getting their stuff to market. I think the enthusiasm for a well-designed and well thought out and unique and niche type development is really smart at any time, right? But I think especially now at the same time, that if you're kind of doing same, I'm just putting this out in the form of a question. If you're just doing same, and we're just doing another RV park or another place with tents, I don't know that that's, I mean, I'm not saying don't do it, but I would think the more unique the opportunity, the more upside story there might be to it, and the more desirability to attract financing from whatever source that might be. It seems like it is always, whether it's lending or building, developing or anything, the difference maker and what makes you stand apart is a huge part of your success, no matter what you do, right? If you're just one of many, that's not that great. If you're one of few, that's a difference maker.
Yeah, even on the buy side, like we've seen some deals come out from brokers that it's a new construction deal, really cookie cutter on their placement of sites, not a ton of landscaping and amenities, and they're sitting on the market, and people are not paying the premium for that new construction deal because they don't see people wanting to pay more for that because there's no true great experience or something unique about it.
Yeah, I think it's just part of the landscape these days. There's so much more creativity these days for current operators, new developers, people coming into it that aren't looking at it from a commodity lens. They're looking at it as an experiential living asset, living, breathing business entity. And the more you attribute uniqueness to it, the higher the ADR, the higher the occupancy and all that. And to your point, Carter, I've seen a lot of what I call submarine farms, where the site layout is just road, site, road, site, road, site. And the only play is a little bit of rate and a little bit of occupancy. There's no experienced driver there to really drive ancillary rev, to drive a different experience, to drive higher rate, to drive yield managed rates and whatnot. You really kind of hurt yourself if you just build to the common denominator and the baseline and don't stretch, right?
So Carter,
Yeah.
with 25 motor coach sites on 16 acres with room for expansion and beautiful
Right.
and no books.
I mean, we're not in that area yet, but that, you know, that's someplace we're looking to go. I mean, we're happy to take a look.
Okay.
I think especially some of those motor coach resorts are gorgeous and they have so much opportunity. So you just have to find the right owner that wants to take on the vision for it. So would love to look at it.
I'll send it over.
Or 95%
needed.
seller carry, and then
Yes.
open up your options.
Right.
So motor coach sites like in Folsom down here, those go to like 300,000. Gorgeous motor coach sites. You can resell them. This one here probably about 2. We'll talk later, but it's a gorgeous location, very desirable, and no financials.
Well, as we kind of come to a close, which seems to have largely been Q&A with Kyle, do any of you have some parting brilliant words of wisdom for people who might be just beginning, or, I mean, we don't know who's watching this. So whatever your heart tells you, what would you like to close with, each one of you?
I can start. I think from even just talking with all of you guys, deals are still getting done. People are active in the space. There's a ton of demand. You just got to find the right one for you. And you got to look at it and be, you know, a bit more conservative, because they're definitely doing that on the lending side. So you don't want to just stretch yourself too thin and think that you can make the numbers work. And then when you take it to your lender and they're looking at larger historicals and not just pro forma numbers, and then they tell you that it can't work and you spent all this time doing the research. But there's still a ton of demand to be in this space, and you can get deals done in any time of market.
Fabulous.
I'd like to say on the seller side, the seller, get your books in order. Okay. And if you're a buyer, go to Kyle. Because really creative plans, options available. I know that you got a deal done for us here where some people think of going to their local lenders, which is okay, but sometimes they're not going to approve your loan. So you're going to have to go to somebody, like Kyle, who can outsource it and has a lot more means of.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'll throw in my last little closing sentence here. I think whether you're buying, operating, disposing of, or doing anything in this space, the best thing you can ever do is not go it alone. The best thing you can ever do is assemble your team, find the right broker, find the right lender, get the best attorney, find the best accountant, engage consultants who can help you along the way. That's your greatest odds of success with buying something, operating it, obtaining funding for it. Don't have the ego involved. Just say, what I don't know, I need to find the best people for and assemble the team. It greatly increases your odds of success.
Fabulous. Well, I would like to close just by thanking all of you for showing up here. Your expertise and everything about who you are is so valuable. And Talk About TV will be bringing more and more of these panel roundtable discussions. Randy likes to do master classes, so we'll be doing more stuff like that. And just in all kinds of things, interviews with women in hospitality. So if you are watching, please subscribe to the channel, share this with anyone who might benefit. And we just invite you to stay in touch. I'll have everybody's contact information in the description. Feel welcome to reach out, learn more, and accomplish your amazing dreams in 2023. Thank you all. Have a beautiful week, and we'll be back again another time. We'll see when that is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you.